Oh, hi guys. I'm John SCIESZKA. I am the guy who wrote The Three Little Pigs, the true story, The Stinky Cheese Man, and you might know me as the first national ambassador of young people's literature, which was kind of great. That's why I love the Library of Congress. They gave me a medal and gave me this great position where I get to tell kids all about all these different kinds of books. And now we have all kinds of ambassadors. We're up to number 8 and Jason Reynolds. But I was the first, and I've still got my medal to prove it, which I kind of love to wear all the time, just to let people know if they get confused, like, who's this guy? So, I'm the ambassador. Yeah. See, we can get real close up. All right. I don't want to mess with Jason. I just put that away. I'm here today to introduce you to the amazing kids book authors that we have at the 20th Library of Congress National Book Festival, the virtual edition, where you get to come and hang out in my library, which is very convenient because I have all the books I want to show you. I've got like just a bazillion of them. And I'll be introducing all these authors who I would just love for you to check out. Because that's kind of the great thing about this festival. You get to hear from so many different writers. And that's the beauty of what reading is. I mean, reading is important. Reading's a great thing, but reading's also fun. And it should be. You should go pick what you like to read. If you like to read information books, we've got information books. If you love graphic novels, plenty of graphic novels. So I hope you use this to just like find something you like. So without further ado, please join me in hearing from all of these spectacular authors that we have. And I hope you find something you like to read. Okay, here's one of my favorite authors ever. She's actually a neighbor not too far from where I live up here in the Catskills now, Sophie Blackall. She does the most amazing books, and she is the most amazing person. And she's kind of put all of that together in her latest book, wondering like what would happen if a kid was writing a letter to an alien and explaining all the things you would need if you came to Earth. And that's what the kid does. And it's just kind of both sweet and funny and explains how we really need to connect with everybody on Earth and take care of Earth. And that's a heck of a great message. So Sophie, tell us more about it.
Hello, I'm Sophie Blackall. I'm thrilled to be here with you as part of the National Book Festival. I'm the illustrator of Finding Winnie and of the Ivy and Bean series. And I'm the author and illustrator of Hello Lighthouse. I'm excited to tell you about my new book, which is called If You Come to Earth. But first, I'm going to warm up with a little painting. For me, drawing is the thing I do when I'm trying to really look at something and see it clearly. When I want to notice what it is and how it works and why it exists. And painting is the thing I do when I'm trying to figure out how something feels. Drawing is slow and painstaking and filled with doubt and lots of sighing and lip biting. But I paint with my heart in my mouth because honestly, I have no idea how it's going to turn out. It's all about physics and chemistry, how the paint moves in water, and how long it takes to dry in the air, and how the pigment reacts with the paper. I use schminky watercolors because my father gave me a set of 24 pans when I was 15, and I painted at least 30 books with that set. And now that I'm a grown-up, I bought a big fancy set with 48 colors, but I stuck with schminky because I'm sentimental. I'm painting a comet in the sky because that's the moment in my book when everything comes together, when we realize that you and I and everyone we know and everyone we've never met share this one planet, this one home. If You Come to Earth is a story about a kid writing a letter to a visitor from outer space, explaining the world. If you come to Earth, here's what you need to know. I wrote the first draft 7 years ago, and it's taken that long to make it a book. When I was working with UNICEF, meeting children around the world, I promised I would try to make a book about all of us and the planet we share. There are still lots of things we don't know. We don't know where we were before we were born, or where we go when we die. But right this minute, we are here together on this beautiful earth. And another thing I know is this: more than ever, we need books, especially books for children and books that connect us. If You Come to Earth is a book about a kid writing a letter to a visitor from outer space explaining the world. If you come to Earth, here's what you need to know: where our planet sits in the solar system, the fact that it's made of land and water, mountains and plains, cities and towns, that the people who live here come in all shapes and sizes, and that we love each other, that we get cold and hungry, that we're always learning, always busy, and that we are not alone, that we share the planet with creatures in the sea, and animals on the land, and birds in the sky, that we make music and art and mistakes, that we tell stories in many languages. Many years ago, I drew a poster for the New York City subway. I've been taking the subway for 20 years since I moved here from Australia, and I always look around at my fellow passengers and think how we each have our own different thoughts and experiences and stories to tell, but that right this minute we are all travelling in the same direction. I hope anyone reading If You Come to Earth might find something in the book just for them, and that alongside the small things they find familiar, that they will also be reminded that the world is wide and diverse and wonderful, and that it belongs to all of us. It's the only home we have, so we should take care of it and each other.
Wow! See, I told you. That's just the kind of book you want to read, right? Well, here's another one. This is by a guy I know. I've run into him a million times when we're out reading books to kids. And his name is Peter Reynolds. Peter H. Reynolds to you. But Peter's got all kinds of fun books. And they're really kind of inspirational, and they kind of just uplifting things to read. And I especially love this latest one because it's kind of what I love to do. Be you. In fact, I'm going to use this from now on. I'm just going to tell people, hey, I got to be me. Well, let Peter explain to you like how that works.
Hi, I am Peter Reynolds, and I am here in my studio where I do my thinking, my writing, my drawing, and it's in Dedham, Massachusetts, which is not too far from Boston, Massachusetts, where I have been living most of my life. I was born in Canada, but I made my home here in Massachusetts. And I am really thrilled to be able to connect the dots with all of you out there and share news about my latest book, which is called Be You. And this is what I like to call the handbook for amazing human beings. It explores this idea of being a human being. And I was thinking to myself, why are we called beings, right? We say humans, right? But we also say human beings. And I thought to myself that that's because we can be, right? We can be so many things. We can be amazing. And that's what I'm hoping this book inspires my young readers, and also really no matter what age you are. In fact, I wrote this book for all ages, and all of us are works in progress. So this book celebrates our possibility, and I'm an optimist, and I think things are going to get better. Maybe because I'm a twin. I was born a twin. I am a twin. My twin brother Paul is my best friend, my big brother by 14 minutes. Being called identical as you're growing up over and over again, and people would stand us next to each other and they try to figure out how we were the same and how we were different. For me, it was the how we are different that was interesting to me, because I am a human being, all separate from Paul, and I love Paul, but I am me and he is he, and he's amazing in the garden, and I love to draw really quickly and take ideas from here and put them down. That's my passion, and I got really fascinated with what people's passions were, what drives you. And I thought, in school, how often do we ask the most important question? The most important question, which is, who are you? Who are you? I'm a huge fan of libraries. And by the way, happy 220th birthday to the Library of Congress. How cool is that? That's an old library. I used to hang out in an old library myself, the Charles Adams Public Library in Chelmsford, Massachusetts. And I remember jumping on my bicycle after school and heading down to, number one, do my homework. And of course, we'd all be racing for there'd be like 4 books on, fill in the blank topic. And so you'd have to get to the library first to get those books. But when I finished my homework, then I was free to roam. And I like to say that I was a free-range chicken in the library, and I could wander anywhere in that library. And that was a very formational moment for me, that I realized that all of these books in all of these sections were mine, and they were mine to explore. And there was no teacher saying, read this book, right? It was me discovering those books. And there was something about a book cover, right? You'd look at a book and it would literally speak to you. You could hear its voice say, read me. This could be important for you. And of course, the only way to find out is to open up that book and start reading, which is kind of my philosophy, is that the blank page is a wonderful thing. And some of us are less afraid of it. And my goal is to make everybody see that blank page as a swimming pool, and see how refreshing it is to dive in and to share, right? What you're thinking, feeling, if you're a bit timid, you can always start at the shallow end of the pool, and then you work your way up to the deep end of the pool, and then you can really do some heavy duty sharing with the world, because the world needs you. The world needs your voice. So don't be shy. Speak up and be a part of the change.
All right, here's something. Our next author is 5 years old. I mean, she's probably the youngest author we've ever had, which might drive some other authors crazy. But I think you might have seen her before. And I think you might be pretty excited to hear her story, because her name is Parker Curry, and she's done this book with her mom. It's called Parker Looks Up. And it's about the time she and her mom went to the National Portrait Gallery a couple years ago, I think, when she was 2. And she saw the picture of Michelle Obama. And she just froze. And in that moment, it kind of said it all. So here's the story behind that. Check this out.
Hi, my name is Parker.
And my name is Jessica. And we are
The authors of Parker Look Up.
we are currently in our hometown of
Washington, D.C. The book is about when I went to the portrait gallery when I was 2 with my mommy and my sister.
And what did we see when we were at the National Portrait Gallery?
And I stopped, froze, looked at Michelle Obama's portrait, and my mommy tried to get a picture of me, but I just froze there. And a stranger took a picture of me looking at the Michelle Obama, the First Lady's portrait. The thing that inspired me was that girl had a beautiful gown and dark skin like me. And I knew I could meet her in person.
Maybe you could meet her in person, and you got to, right?
Yes, for 3 times.
Yes. We wanted to write the book because we wanted to share the story, but
with other kids and other grown-ups, so they can be inspired and they can maybe write a book.
you said it better than I could have.
And they can be authors. they can be actors. And they can inspire the world with their books.
Okay, good job.
Cool.
It was very cool to hang out with Michelle Obama. I think cool may be an understatement. It was surreal. It was
So magical.
It was magical to meet Michelle Obama. I was going to say magical. It was magical to meet her.
And enchanting.
It was enchanting. Mrs. Obama is as
friend of mine.
a friend of Parker's, but Miss Obama is as kind and as warm and as humble as you could ever imagine. And it was a wonderful experience to meet her and to meet her in person and see the interaction between.
And hug her and do a dance, lady. You stick it up. I stick it up. Oh, woo.
As you can see, Parker has very fond memories of her visits with Michelle Obama. And I'm grateful for Mrs. Obama's willingness to further inspire Parker beyond the portrait. I hope that readers will take away from this book that representation is indeed very important, more now than ever. And we hope that our book will inspire children like Parker and little ones to dream big dreams, because anything is achievable. You can even be an author at 5 years old, right?
Yeah.
So dream big dreams.
How amazing is that? So all you authors out there, get started. I don't care how old you are. Get your book going. Let's join the party. Come on, I'll be introducing your book next year. So get started writing it. All right, here's some books you need to read. If you are a middle grade reader or want to be, here's the way to start. Stella Diaz by Angela Dominguez. And she writes just these kind of funny, sweet, spot illustrated books, because she's both the illustrator and the writer, which is kind of cool. And she's telling her story, or it's kind of her story, a little autobiographical, but also fictionalized, about a shy Mexican girl who becomes an environmental activist and makes a difference in her community. Who wouldn't want to read that? So it's Stella Diaz has something to say, and Stella Diaz never gives up. So don't give up. Check these out.
So hi, I'm Angela Dominguez. I'm an author and illustrator, and I've worked on quite a few books. The books I'm going to talk today about is the Stella Diaz series, Stella Diaz Never Gives Up, which is the second, and this was the first, Stella Diaz Has Something to Say. And I am here in Doylestown, Pennsylvania with my little puppy Petunia. She's a Boston Terrier Chihuahua mix. It's about Stella, who is this character who is shy, and in the first book she's really finding her voice. In the second book she's still a little shy, and she has to use these conversation starters to kind of help her, which are like just fun facts that she shares to start a conversation. But it's about her learning to become a leader when maybe you don't have the loudest voice in the room. And so it's about this growth of this character and this continuing love of the oceans. And also it still has to do somewhat with her trying to fit in the world. Because like Stella, I was born in Mexico and grew up in the United States. And sometimes I stumbled with my English and my Spanish. And with this book, she visits Mexico, and she kind of has that connection of like, what does it mean to be Mexican? What does it mean to be Mexican American? So there's a lot in this book that I feel like a lot of kids can relate to. And we're seeing all these wonderful activists like Greta Thunberg who are really caring about the environment. And I wanted to show kids that they can be part of the solution in their own way. More than anything, I just hope this book inspires kids to speak up for themselves and also be passionate about something.
All right, don't tell anybody else. But here is one of my favorite kids' books of the last year. It's Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky by KWAME MBALIA. Oh, is this something else? It's fantasy, it's action, it's mythology. It's a mix of African American folk tales and West African gods that just get all mashed together. So we got John Henry just duking it out with Anansi. And one of the cool things about this book too is it's the first in a series of books by Rick Riordan, who you know from Percy Jackson. So I mean, if Rick Riordan likes it, that's a great recommendation. And this is going to be a series. So get started and you are going to be amazed.
Hi, my name is KWAME MBALIA, author of the Tristan Strong series. Tristan Strong is an African-American boy who is dealing with grief and sorrow. And so he has been sent by his parents down to his grandparents' farm. It's a new place. It's scary. There's no Wi-Fi. Things are terrible. And then he meets someone very intriguing whose name is Gum Baby. I wanted to write Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky for a couple of reasons. The first and foremost, I grew up listening to African-American folktales, African folktales. I was one of four who we shared a bedroom, and, 4 kids in one room trying to get them to go to bed at night was, wild and tough. So my parents would play stories on a cassette player. They would play the Anansi tales, and we would listen to them. And, I would dream about Anansi and all his trickster games and all of the different shenanigans that he would get into. So I wanted to write a story that involved those characters, but to bring it forward for, readers today, my children, students, young adults, kids, like the readers who are reading it right now. But the other reason that I wanted to write this book was because Tristan is dealing with grief. He has lost someone close to him, someone who he loves and cherishes and who meant the world to him. That was his best friend. About 6 months before I started writing this book, my father died. And so writing about how Tristan dealt with his grief throughout the book helped me, help myself, and also help my daughters go through the grief of losing their grandfather. So it's a 2-part answer, and I love this answer because it involves both dealing with grief and also dealing with wonder and joy, 2 sides of a coin, and something that I think we should present to readers like you as much as we can to show you that the world is not always high and the world is not always low, but how we deal with the changes between both. And then a lot of research was just me finding out how to tell a good story, and that when you're reading a story, it's completely different from when you're listening to a story. You might hear voices. Someone might do voices. The cadence, the rhythm, the melody might change. And so a lot of my research was not necessarily what stories to tell, but how to tell that story. Writing your own version of a myth or a legend, I mean, it can sound intimidating. You'll have a lot of detractors, a lot of people who say, oh, that's not what John Henry's hammer was supposed to look like, or that's not what Anansi was supposed to sound like. And what you have to realize is that you have to write the version of the story that you find that attracts you, that sparks wonder in you. For me, it was writing Anansi. He's a trickster character. But what is a trickster character? Is he always playing jokes? Does he have puns? Or does he just always have like a sly smile? And so you're never quite sure if he's telling the truth or if you need to get a second opinion. Write the version of the story that speaks to you, the one that's inside of you. Because at the end of the day, you're the one who's going to enjoy it. Whether someone else wants to read it, whether someone else wants to read it aloud, it doesn't matter. Write the story that matters to you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for having me. Thank you for reading and supporting my books. Thank you for reading and supporting your libraries, your local libraries, or whether it's the Library of Congress. Thank you for being readers. Thank you for enjoying stories. And hopefully I'll get to read one of yours in the near future.
Wow. How about that? Well, your next writer is a friend of mine who's going to give you an earful too. This guy, Mo Willems. You probably know who he is. He's this guy. Don't let the pigeon drive the bus guy. Also wrote some Knuffle Bunny books and some of my personal favorites, Elephant and Piggy books. And in fact, this next book is the Elephant and Piggy Biggie Piggy, Volume 3? Could it be? Tell us more, Mo Willems. Be yourself. We know you will.
But I think a lot of adults frame the question by saying, where do you get your ideas? As if they're a thing. Like, where do you buy your shoes? And ideas are not a thing. Ideas are a growth. Right?
A growth.
Yes, ideas are like a plant. They grow. You have a seed of an idea and it gets bigger and bigger. So as opposed to where do you get your idea, how do you grow your ideas? Those are two very different ways of framing the question. And I think that's why a lot of people, a lot of artists have a hard time answering, where do you get your ideas? They're like, I used to make a joke and say, well, I get them in Belize because everything has to be Belizeable. Because ideas aren't gotten. They're not things. Ideas are too important to be things. Things are less important than ideas.
I just can't believe how much stuff we've got going on here. Isn't that crazy? I mean, you can read anything, right? Well, here's another thing you can read. Our next author is a guy your parents probably know who wrote the Da Vinci Code, but now he wrote a book for you called The Wild Symphony. And not only did he write this book, he wrote the music to it. It's the craziest thing. I kind of love that it has all of that stuff together. All the different animals have a different part in the symphony. You can actually access it with your phone. You can hear the music, look at the pictures, experience the book. And Dan Brown's a guy who knows some libraries. And I love that he's such a fan of the Library of Congress. And in fact, we've got a little special treat for you too. We've got the Librarian of Congress strolling through the Library of Congress with a friend of hers by the name of Dahlia Marie Arana. She was 4 years old then, and she had read over 1,000 books already. Just trying to make us all feel bad. But don't feel bad. Just read some more books. Let's catch up with her. So tell us what you got, Dan.
My name is Dan Brown. I am coming to you from my home in New Hampshire. This is my library where I keep one copy of all of my books from around the world. I call it the Fortress of Gratitude just because these books have enabled me to make great connections with publishers all over the world. I'm a huge fan of the Library of Congress. I've been there numerous times, but I think for anybody who goes to the Library of Congress, the thing they always take away is that sense that we have when we first step into the reading room. It is, as I said in the novel, it is considered the most beautiful room in the world by many writers. And I certainly, when I first saw it, felt the same way. And I was honored to be able to be in there. So thank you for that. And a final hope for Wild Symphony is that it inspires young people to dare to be creative, to dare to draw, to dare to write, to dare to make music. The creative process for me personally and for many people is the single most rewarding aspect of my life. To take something and create it out of nothing. You take a blank piece of paper and you create a world, or you take silence and you create a symphony. You take a blank piece of paper and create a whole world of drawings. So I do hope that there will be young people who read Wild Symphony and not only enjoy it, but think, you know what? I'd like to do something like that. I bet I could write poetry. I bet I could draw. I bet I can make music. So that would be a real bonus if the book inspired people to learn to love the creative process. Just in closing, I wanted to thank the Library of Congress for putting on this amazing festival. It is so important to celebrate books in our culture. We live in a world where we're increasingly tied to technology, and books in all of their forms are a reminder of where we come from and in a real sense where we're going. And I just, I'm grateful that we're taking the time and you're taking the energy to celebrate books. Thank you.
Our next author is a spectacular new talent on the scene, Jerry Craft. Oh, man. And his book, New Kid, partially based on his own experience about, going to a school, but not really a school that was part of his neighborhood. So the problem was, like, sometimes he was part of his neighborhood, sometimes he was part of his school, sometimes he was part of neither, and it was hard to fit in. But man, I love all of the art in this. And if you're a graphic novel fan, you have to read this. But hear it from Jerry.
Hi, my name is Jerry Craft, and I am a resident of Norwalk, Connecticut. And a lot of times with graphic novels, there's still some people that look down at it like, a prose book is like steak, a fine steak, and a graphic novel is like, donut, something like that. That's just dessert. But I know, having written prose books, that I put the same amount of work, rewriting, the editing process, the story arc, the character development, I put in any book that I've ever done. The message in New Kid is to just take a little extra time to get to know people. So how to pronounce their name, how to spell their name. If your friend is Chinese, that's not the same as being Korean. That's not the same as being Indonesian. If they're Dominican, that's different than being Puerto Rican. So I really feel that if we take that time to learn about each other, learn about the culture, learn about food without always going, ew, what is that? Like, hey, let me taste that. Let me look at it. Let me learn. I think that we'll all be better off for it. My message to aspiring writers and illustrators is, I know that whenever I do school visits, I always show homework from 7th grade that I used to draw superheroes on, or even comic books that I would make. Because a lot of kids will look at New Kid and go, oh, I can't ever do that. I'm like, I couldn't do this either. Like, I drew just like you did. But it's a matter of what you want to do with it, how much you practice. And also, not having, some kids are so hard on themselves that they'll draw like one little line and go, oh, I messed up, and then spend the next 20 minutes erasing. They would spend more time erasing than they do creating. Sketchbooks that are just half full and then thrown in the garbage because they didn't like it. So give yourself a break,
Our next author is somebody you might have heard of before. She's kind of big. She's kind of great. Parents, you probably know her as the most generous person on social media, Chelsea Clinton. You other people might have heard of her mom or dad, but I don't know. I think we need to hear about more from her, because she had an amazing book out, She Persisted, and her new book is She Persisted in Sports, which kind of covers an amazing bunch of women, half of whom you've probably never heard of, or might have heard just a little bit, but you need to know the real story. So Chelsea's bringing it to you. Chelsea, tell us what you got.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Clinton, and I am currently sitting in Chappaqua, New York. As a new mom, reading books to my daughter Charlotte, who at the time was 2.5, and my infant son Aiden, just realized how many of the children's books were centered on and told through male kind of voices and gazes. Even so many of the books around animal characters were kind of told through kind of male ducks or male cows or male frogs. And I wanted there to be kind of more women injected into the pages of children's storybooks. And I certainly think we see American ingenuity in sports. And I think about, some of the women that I highlight in She Persisted in Sports, whether kind of Wilma Rudolph, who kind of overcame multiple illnesses and challenges as a child, and kind of went on to kind of prove what was possible for Black women athletes, and kind of was the first kind of image that so many Americans saw on their television screens of a kind of fierce, unapologetic, strong, successful Black woman athlete, and possibly for many white Americans, just a Black woman kind of achieving and proving what was possible kind of through her own brand of American ingenuity. We think of ingenuity as kind of being the province of our scientists or our kind of creatives, whether authors or filmmakers, visual artists, performance artists. I think it's also really important that we recognize kind of ingenuity can come in the way someone teaches a class or in the way kind of someone races across a finish line. Part of these stories for me are both to inspire kids to think and to see themselves, to visualize themselves in these character stories, so that hopefully they are unafraid and unapologetic on the sports field, whatever kind of that field may be. And also to think that isn't right. I don't think it's okay that these girls were told they couldn't do something. I hope you enjoy She Persisted in sports. And I hope that if you have books that you think we should be reading with my kids, I hope you'll send those recommendations my way.
Here's a little more history for you. If you ever wondered about who was that woman who helped out our second president, John Adams, that would be Abigail Adams. And in this book, Leave It to Abigail, Barb Rosenstock lets us know what did happen. Abigail was incredibly important to our second president. I mean, I think we really got all kinds of great things in our government from her because she became involved and helped the president. And she also became the mother of another president, John Quincy Adams. So how great is that? Abigail Adams, check her out.
Hi, I'm Barb Rosenstock, the author of a bunch of nonfiction and historical fiction picture books for children. And you're here in my writing office, which used to be a bedroom. I live north of Chicago, Illinois, and my latest book is Leave It to Abigail, The Revolutionary Life of Abigail Adams. It's illustrated by Elizabeth Badley, and it's about Abigail Adams. And Abigail was born before our country started. People talk about the founding fathers all the time, but Abigail was one of our founding mothers. And she's one of the most important ones, too. She was the first American woman to talk about women's rights. And she did that in a really famous letter to her husband, John Adams, where she said the words, "Remember the ladies." She was trying to get John to put some idea of women's rights in our country's initial documents that were making the laws for the beginning of the United States. Abigail also surprised people in millions of ways. Her whole life, in a time when girls were supposed to stay quiet and in the background, she was confident and competent. She was a great parent, a great politician, a great writer, a great businesswoman. And whenever there were problems in her life, people relied on her, and kind of Leave It to Abigail became one of the things that was said a lot about her. She could do anything. She used her skills to support her family and her country and the other women in her life. I love the library in general. It's like my first memory is being taken to the library, but the Library of Congress specifically, I wrote an entire book about the Library of Congress called Thomas Jefferson Builds a Library, and obviously did a lot of research in the Library of Congress's own collections to find out the information for the book and how Thomas Jefferson's books became the core of the collection. I have actually used the library often. This other book, Otis and Will Discover the Deep, was inspired in part by a librarian named Connie Carter, who's at the Library of Congress. And she was sort of the godmother of the book. The book is dedicated to Connie. And we did lots of work researching early ocean science in those collections at the Library of Congress. And Fight of the Century was in part kind of inspired by the Library of Congress's suffragist photo collection, which is on a specific site right now. It's the 100th anniversary this year of the 19th Amendment. And I used those photos and realized how much actual conflict there was in the suffrage movement, and came up with the idea of Alice Paul and Woodrow Wilson and the fight that gave women the right to vote, how she had a battle for it. So I use the Library of Congress kind of all the time. I'm a big fan, big fan. Everyone has a story. Kids especially. Kids have hundreds of stories to tell, and I want them to know that their stories are important. People need to hear what you think and you wish and you hope for and you dream about. So writing is the process of playing with words, really, to tell a story. So keep reading and keep writing and keep playing.
This is turning into the History Channel, and I'm loving it because that's what I love to read. In fact, half of these books back here is history, comics, little science fiction down there, all my kids' books over there, all my goofy books there, my fishing books there. But here's a book I am so happy to add to my library because it was exactly that thing I was talking about, where we think we've heard of the Underground Railroad and know about it. And you certainly have heard Harriet Tubman's name, but have you ever heard of William Still and his freedom stories? He worked at the same time as Harriet Tubman, and he was a person, his whole family ran away, came up to Pennsylvania, and then he helped other slaves escape. But the coolest thing was he kept a record of all the slaves that he was helping. So in some ways, and there's these great end papers in this book, that's from his actual diary entries. Some of this is the only way people can connect with their families still to this day. And this is by Don Tate, who's just an amazing writer. This is another great thing. Like, find a great book like this and read more of his stuff. Because I've met Don before, and he's just a spectacular guy about digging in and really making history come alive. So check out William Still and more Don Tate stuff.
Good morning. My name is Don Tate, and I live in Austin, Texas. And I'm honored to be visiting with all of you in my home studio. I've been writing and illustrating children's books for 30 plus years, but I've been right here in this studio for about 20 years in warm, cozy Austin, Texas, where I absolutely love living. So I am really excited to introduce my next book. Is called William Still and His Freedom Stories, Father of the Underground Railroad, and it publishes with Peachtree. And I'm going to read a bit of the story for you. This story begins at a time when the United States was split in two. In the North, Black people were free. In the South, they were enslaved by whites. Slavery was a nightmare. Back-breaking work under a scorching sun, threats of lashing or worse, no pay. Children were separated from their mamas and papas, brothers and sisters, sold away at auction, never to be seen again. Sometime during the 1700s, Levin and Sidney Steele were held captive on a Maryland farm, forced to work. Their 4 children were too. The family yearned to live free. And so I wanted to tell the story of not only William Still, but the many hundreds of African Americans who played an important role in the success of the Underground Railroad system. So what inspired me to tell William Still's story? I love stories of little known historical figures. When I was in school, I remember studying all about Rosa Parks and Dr. Martin Luther King, but those stories often didn't go beyond the stories of Dr. King. And so when I got into publishing, I wanted to tell children the stories of other African American historical figures who did great things in the face of adversity. And so I thought, that's the story that I want to tell. I want to tell William Still's story so that children understand the role that we played in helping our own people. So throughout history, Americans have demonstrated considerable ingenuity in overcoming obstacles. And those are the stories that I like to tell. Makes no difference whether we are talking about George Washington or Benjamin Franklin, who were imperfect figures. They went on to do great things to make contributions to our world, as did George Moses Horton, who was an enslaved poet, who became the first African American to get a book published in the South, and he published while he was still enslaved, as did Lonnie Johnson, who was the inventor of the Super Soaker squirt gun. William Still recorded the stories of enslaved people as they passed through his office. He not only recorded their stories, but he recorded details like the color of their skin, their height, where they were running away from, who had enslaved them. It was his hope that he could help reunite enslaved people after they had escaped north, to help them to reunite with their families. Little did he know that his work would help to reunite his own family. So what children can do to be sure that their own stories don't get lost and preserved, you can do exactly what I'm doing today. And I just decided this recently. I'm going to write a memoir. I'm going to tell the story of my life in graphic novel form. I'm going to use words and pictures. And I encourage kids to tell their own stories, not only so that they can take a look at and investigate their own lives, but think about future generations of children who want to study and learn about your life today in 2020, say living through a pandemic, or whatever it is, whatever challenge that you may be living with at home. Think about that kid 100 years from now who wants to know what's going on in your life. Sit down and record your story every day. Talk about your family, your brothers and sisters, the things that are going around you in the world. How do you feel about the circumstances that you're living through? Record those things, because those are the details that will help future generations of people.
Another middle grade book it's called The Three Keys by Kelly Yang, partially based on Kelly's experience of growing up in California as a Chinese immigrant, her parents, and they just had to she had to deal with being seen as an alien, someone from outside. And I know she's talked about how it just freaked her out as a kid, saying how am I an alien? I'm a kid. I've got friends. I go to school. And at that time when she was growing up, California started messing around with laws saying if you're an alien, maybe you can't go to school. And it's both just shocking and topical, but also funny and just uplifting and just a fun read. So listen to Kelly some more and then pick up this book.
Hi, I'm Kelly Yang, and I'm the author of Front Desk, and I'm also the author of Three Keys, the sequel to Front Desk. I've always wanted to write a sequel to Front Desk because in my mind, the story was not over. I wanted to see what happened to that family, what happens to Mia as she gets older and she has to deal with, her friends at school and also people finding out what she does for a living, which is she lives and works in a motel. And that was always so terrifying to me growing up as a kid. I never saw that reflected in books or in movies and TV shows. So I always thought that where I lived was really not normal. And so I always wanted to hide it and keep it a secret. And in Three Keys, Mia's biggest secret is revealed to her class because somebody in her class finds out that she actually does live and work in a motel. And so she has to deal with the aftermath of having that truth be revealed. But just to give you guys a hint, it is not the end of the world, and in fact becomes a really interesting turning point in the story. And I actually, in fact, originally wrote Front Desk for my son, who was only 8 at the time, and he had no idea how I grew up, because the way I grew up was so different from the way that he grew up. You know, and he grew up like, you know, in a normal house and with like a dog and all these, you know, he didn't have to worry about going to the Goodwill to find clothes. Like I would take him to Target or whatever. And so he had a really different life than the way I was raised and the way I grew up. So when he was 8, I thought to myself, like, I better tell him, because if I never tell my own kids, you know, what does that say about me? And so I took a huge leap of courage, a leap of faith, because I didn't know how he was going to react. And I didn't want him, you know, I didn't want him to be embarrassed by it, but I also didn't want him to feel sad for me, because I had joy as a kid. Like if you read Front Desk and you read Three Keys, you'll see there's a lot of joy and fun in these books. You know, I had a fun childhood. It was really fun. So I wanted him to experience all of that, the whole package, you know, the hope and the optimism and the joy and just the silliness of growing up, but also the real issues that we had to face. And we had, you know, a lot of real issues, like, you know, not having a turkey for Thanksgiving, which is very real. And like, you know, not having all the fancy toys, not having vacations, never having a vacation. It was really hard growing up. But I wanted to put that in with a heavy dose of hope so that he would have that empathy in him towards all people from all different walks of life, all different ethnicities, and be able to understand more about the world, which is really what the Front Desk series was all about. And when I took that leap of faith, he loved it. At the end of that summer, I remember he came back from camp and he was like, "Mom, you have to do something with that story." And I said, "Well, what am I going to do about it?" And he said, you have to sell it. You have to like, let me make copies and sell them to my classmates." And that's when I realized, you know what? First of all, I better get a literary agent, but also that that it's really amazing what can happen when you share the truth and when you are not afraid to put yourself on the page. So my final message for kids is never give up. If you like writing like Mia, you know, keep at it. Keep going to the library, keep reading, keep writing, even if you're making mistakes. I made a ton of spelling mistakes, a ton of grammar mistakes growing up. But trust me, it'll get better and it'll get easier and it'll get funner. So just keep at it. Keep learning, you guys. I know we're going through a rough time right now, but I believe in you and I'm here for you.
Oh man, here's one of my favorite books, because I love information books. It's that thing where you, like, even for stuff you think you know about, maybe you don't know everything. Maybe there's some more information you could learn about. And that's the case with this book. It's called Finish the Fight. The Brave and Revolutionary Women Who Fought for the Right to Vote. And it's kind of interesting that this year was exactly 100 years since we've ratified the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, saying women could vote. I mean, my first question is, why did that take so long? The second one is, who else was helping out? And there's all these amazing women who you probably haven't heard of before. I mean, of course, we've heard of Susan B. Anthony, but Josephine St. Pierre Ruffin? No, probably not. So check it out. Be a more informed citizen and maybe find out some stuff that we can use today.
Hi, I'm Veronica Chambers, and I'm the author, along with several other New York Times journalists, of a book called Finish the Fight. I come to you from Hoboken, New Jersey, and I'm in my apartment, and I'd love to tell you about the book. Finish the Fight is the story of the brave and revolutionary women who fought for the right to vote. When I was growing up, I studied women's history, but I actually didn't learn a lot about suffrage. So our book really focuses on the women in suffrage that you don't often hear about. We are often taught about Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and sometimes we hear about Alice Paul, but we really wanted to talk about women like Mary Church Terrell and women that are thought of as race women like Ida B. Wells Barnett, but who were really integral to the suffrage story. We also really, really wanted to center the narrative of Native American women into this story, partly because, as one of the American scholars that we interviewed said, you know, women have had the vote in the United States for 100 years, but Haudenosaunee women, which is a nation in the Native American tribe system, they have had political power for 1,000 years. You know, we're at a moment where, because of where we are in the country and the world and a public health crisis, we're all spending a little bit more time alone. We're spending a little bit more time inside, but I think we also have a tremendous opportunity to connect with greater ideas that can help us shape the future. The suffragists, they were going through World War I. They were going through the Spanish flu. You find so many parallels in history. And what you realize is that, you know, people survive and they find that ingenuity to go back to it. They find creative solutions. Sometimes having limited resources or choices helps you be more creative. That's something to remember as a young person. I think when I was a kid, I thought, if I was super rich and if I had all the help in the world, I could do anything. But I think actually not being super rich and only having limited help really forced me to dig into my own creativity and figure things out and try things and not be afraid to try. I would advise young people and the people who teach them, their parents, the teachers, librarians, to really embrace this moment for connection and exploration and curiosity. Thank you so much for having us, me and my co-authors, as part of this festival.
Thanks, Veronica. That is just amazing. And I've got that book right here on my desk. I'm reading it. But our next author is really my favorite author, I gotta say, because it's me. I've been working on these books called The Astronauts. It's a 3-book series. Book 2 is just coming out. Oh, here's book 1, The Plant Planet. Book 2, The Water Planet. And book 3 is going to be The Perfect Planet. But the guy I'm working with, Steven Weinberg, my son-in-law, pretty amazing too. Take a look at these guys.
Beep, 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 beep. Oh, hi.
Well, hello, and welcome to the inside of our rocket ship. How do you like that? So Astronauts is the story of 4 superpowered animals looking for a Goldilocks planet. They have to find a planet that's not as polluted as this one. And Earth is our narrator, and she's not too thrilled about what's going on. So these guys in this next book land on the water planet, which has been taken over by clams. Clam McConnell is making things bad, but luckily there's a clam resistance. There's Susan B. Clampany. And she gets together with the astronauts. And well, I don't want to give it all away, but let me just tell you, things get weird, things get wild. And as in every astronaut book, there's a giant fold-out fight, a battle royale, astronauts versus bad clams. You haven't seen anything like that. And it ends with my favorite, Earth. She says, come on, you guys, we got to work on this together. Well, that's it. That's the National Book Festival. You have been here. Thanks so much for joining us. Now go out there and just like be yourself. Remember, like we said, be you. I'll be me. You be you. We'll be us. And just enjoy yourself. Read some books. Thanks, guys.